All right, Phil, thank you very much. For everybody that's managed to join this evening, this session has a lot of untested content. It's been put together. I had the agenda in mind a few weeks back, and in building it, the tricky thing is I don't know how long it's going to take to get through what we've got. There's a bit of technical content, a lot of show and tell stuff, and I'm really keen that if you've got questions, you ask them on the fly. Feel free to either put them in the chat or come off mute and actually ask them. They're probably better asked.
Maybe use the raise the hand feature.
Yep, thank you. So probably better asked as we go through it, and we can cover that stuff off at the time. So let's get underway. I'm going to actually kick off with not that. There we go. Right. So for tonight, we're going to come across the Definity conference that's coming up in Auckland. We'll have a look at what's come out very, very high level in the Power BI releases in May and June. High dive for data marts, and I promise it will be very, very high. And then we're going to do a deep dive. So I've got essentially all the rest of the stuff is actually demos. So we'll have a look at field parameters, probably also a rarely used feature, and that's a bit of guesswork, on export to Excel. We'll have a look at auto exists. So a little challenge that I came across in the last couple of months, which I needed some significantly elevated support to nut out and solve. So we'll share that with you. Show you some of my best practice Power BI report publishing steps, and composite models, so trying to debug some performance issues in one of those, Power BI maturity models, and incremental refresh. So a whole lot to get through, and we'll just see how we actually go. This is just a very, very quick advertisement / reminder. The Definity conference in New Zealand is coming up and towards the end of November. If it's New Zealand's only Power BI conference. So Phil and I have been there for probably almost all of the conferences that have been held for Definity in Auckland. They've had increasing numbers every year, but stifled by COVID. So this is starting it up again, and really looking forward to it. So I know Phil's presenting. I'm also a presenter at that conference as well. So looking forward to meeting everybody and getting that underway. Right, let's cover off some what's new in Power BI. So I don't know how many people here actually managed to get through the Power BI releases, because they're coming out every month. In May, there was some ongoing and significant changes to the new format pane that has come out, and I urge you to have a look at the Microsoft YouTube video on what's new in those releases. There's a really good tip in there that automatically expands the drop-down panels, the subcategories of the format pane. So it means that you're doing less clicks. So that's quite important. And some stuff that, because they've been migrating it, some stuff that wasn't in that formatting pane previously has actually now been added in. When I go on to the service later on, we'll have a look at Canvas Zoom. That's a new thing that's come into the desktop and the service. Really powerful for zooming into stuff on the screen. Also good for your development ability as well, if you're looking for pixel perfect development work. Field parameters, we've got a demo on that coming up, so that's extremely powerful, and we'll go into that when it's there. Data marts. Data marts came out in May. They are not available in all of the regions yet. I know I can't create a data mart with the region that I'm in. It's only available for premium and premium per user consumption, and it is essentially a fully managed SQL database. So if Jonathan was here and he can't make it tonight, he was going to give us just a couple of minutes on that. So we'll probably skip our little high dive into that. But needless to say, it's a fully managed SQL database that exists in the cloud. And there's some stuff in the June release that takes advantage of that. Goals got renamed metrics. The Charticulator visual is now GA, and there's some, if you utilize subscriptions in the service, there's been a lot of changes in there to help with management of those as well. Rolling forward into June, and June's so new that I haven't actually got it on my corporate laptop yet. The format pane's now gone GA. There's a lot of changes in the table navigation. So if you're presenting a lot of tables in your reports, there's quite a lot of changes in there. I haven't, because I'm not on that release, I haven't seen them yet enough to explain them, and I don't think I've actually seen any obvious stuff in the service for them either, but I expect that stuff will continue to change. There's changes to information protection if you're using that. That release, the June release, will allow you to connect to data marts. What have we also got here? Power BI data storing. Oh, that's right. So you're able to now more easily hook in Power BI reports into PowerPoint. So effectively, your PowerPoint slide deck becomes an interactive Power BI report. So that's really, really powerful, depending on how you distribute PowerPoint decks, for example. If you print them, it's obviously not going to be interactive. June reports that the load time for custom visuals is much better, and InfoRiver, who presented to us last month, not their charts, but their premium product, is now certified in AppSource. So those are the major call-outs for what's changed in May and June. All right. I'm going to skip the high dive on the data marts. It's a fully managed SQL database. So
yeah, we'll see if we'll get Jonathan to do that next month, go into a little bit more detail on what they are and what you might use them for, or what the gotchas are. I'm pretty sure he will have had more of a chance to get hands-on with them. So,
and hopefully the rest of us will have had a chance to get our hands on them, so to speak, as well. So yeah, cool, that's good. All right. Field parameters. Let's go and have a look at field parameters. So we're going to switch to the right Power BI report. Okay, let's go full screen on this Power BI report. Now, I need one other screen just to help me out. That one there. Okay. So field parameters is probably best explained by showing you. So let's have a look at this example setup that they've done. And across the top of the screen, you can see there's effectively it's a filter or a slicer. And when I go and change from COGS that is selected to price, the data that's presented on this chart changes to be in context essentially with what's being presented. If I now switch it to order quantity, it changes to what order quantity, the order quantity value, and changes the chart accordingly. If we amp this up a bit more, we can see here that in this slicer, we've selected product, color, list price, average quantity, product category ID, which are all these values across the top. And that's just a matrix view. So let's add in product ID, and the product ID column's now displayed. Same with COGS as well. And one of the things that I've noticed with this is that if I just go and turn these off, the order in which you add them in is now the column order that is presented. So depending on what you're doing and how you're presenting stuff to your users, you're now giving them a really, really powerful tool. One of my,
sorry,
Phil.
Oh, I was just going to say, so field parameters, what they're doing is solving a problem that you've had the ability to solve using other techniques for a number of years. But they present probably a much easier, more elegant, simple way to be able to give your end user access dynamically to changing some selection values, like you're doing with your slicer in this screen or the previous screen.
Yeah.
And then have the visual next to it, show the appropriate measure or value. Now, you have been able to solve this other ways, but field parameters does this in, I think, a much more elegant, easier to set up way. And it's quite flexible.
I struggle with AdventureWorks and Contoso because it's not my data, and it's just trying to wrap your head around what it actually is. So I'm really keen to see this implemented by people in their own reports, and what they're going to deliver to users to get value out of it. Because it is exceedingly powerful. When I go to this page here, the product analysis, this is like showing you everything on steroids. So you can see again the slices across the top here, and if I switch this to COGS, all the data now switches around to be relevant to COGS, or switch it to order quantity, this changes, this one changes, switch this to model, and they change around again. But again, you kind of have to understand the data as to exactly what's going on.
Yeah, so previously you might have had to write a bit of DAX or create a calculation group. Here you've got just a couple of clicks, type in some field names, and it's a lot easier. The barrier to create that dynamic experience for your end user is improved, I think, by having the option of using field parameters for
very,
these sorts
very
of
much
things.
so. And so if I'm just going to go to a blank page here, and I go to the modeling page, and here under new parameter is fields. And we're going to create a field called Wellington Excel Power BI User Group Demo. That'll do. And we want to put in name of sale, LT product name, LT sales product. Here it is. No, it's over here. Sorry. Product, and we want name. Now, the order in which they go in is relevant, and you can change the order around. Product color. We want color out of this. Thank you very much. And product ID, that'll do. So if I decide I want color down here, I can just shift its order around right now. I'm going to add the slicer to the page and go create. And so it's actually created a table for me with what appears to be a column. It appears as a column, but I'm not sure it actually is. And now if I need to edit it or add more, I'll have to do it manually in this piece of DAX code. But if I get product here and let's just get cost, that'll do. We'll make it a table. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go and grab the field parameter that I created and just drop it in the front. Done. And so now I can add in, shift that over a bit better. Name, color, product, hold down control, add the others in, and I'm done. So it is actually really simple and quite powerful. You just have to now put the right controls on the slicer for how you'd like it to work for your users. So I think that's actually really cool and very, very powerful. So I'm keen to start using it in some of my reports when I can figure out the right place to use them for what's going on. So yeah, that's a really, really quick look at field parameters. Now, next up, any questions on that one? Nope, that's cool.
Chat window.
Okay, cool. All right, let's go and have...
anyone actually built a report with field parameters yet? Let us know in the chat while David carries on to the next thing. I'd just like to hear.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to show you guys now export to Excel. And when I showed some people at my work this, I think it was pretty much, and these are Power BI developers that kind of know what they're doing. They didn't know that this existed. So let's go and take a look at this. Right, this is a Power BI report that I prepared earlier. So it's basically a database of 300,000 DVDs with some other attributes that we know about the DVDs, and then references to other tables that contain directors and actors. Some of the data is not formatted the best. Just trust me, run with it. It's an import from Excel, and I've just took the data as it was. So you're probably all used to coming up to the three dots up here and going to export data, and you can either now export with data with current layout or the summarized data. And if I turned it on, you'd also be able to do the underlying data. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use this export. And it's not actually an export, it's analyze in Excel. And when I go and kick that off, it's creating the Excel file. And yeah, now I have to tell you, I don't like this. Open an Excel for web, because it didn't give me another option. I'm going to trust it. And then I probably don't need to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. No, I won't do it. So basically, what we end up with is here's a pivot table, and here are, well, basically here's the database. So I can now go, because I prepared some stuff before, so I've got some row counts, just go and get me the value for the count of the DVDs, 334,000. Or let me go and just show me, actually we'll get rid of that one, remove, go and grab me all the actors that we have in the database, please. This is probably one of those queries that I shouldn't really have done. Okay, we're not going to do that here. We're going to close this.
Yeah, well, you're basically creating a pivot table with across columns of every single unique actor.
Oh, I did columns.
You're grouping by the unique number.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let's just remove that field.
Yeah,
Let's
maybe drag
go.
it to the rows, or
Yeah,
that's
I
not a
meant to go
lot.
to rows. Rows. There we go. Rows.
Now, for those that are old school, underneath the covers, this
Here we
is
go.
actually sending MDX, not DAX, to the database engine. So it's not going to be as quick as perhaps if you were to do this inside Power BI itself. But still,
Very
being
powerful.
in Excel gives you, some wonderful things that
Yeah.
I think David is heading to in
Yeah.
terms of.
So here's our list of actors, and I can then, if you understand what's been built, you can now go and load up the filters and the rows and the columns with all the bits and pieces that you need. So I'm just going to conveniently close this and switch to, here it is.
One I baked earlier.
One I baked earlier, yep. So here I have the director who I have selected from this slicer that I was able to add to the screen. And there's all their DVD titles that they've produced, the price, and I can't remember what total was. It's a count of the DVDs, that's right. Because if I was to collapse that one, nope. This would be really good if I've lost my connection.
Oh, I can still hear you, so you must be
No, I don't know why.
semi-connected.
I don't know why that errored. I only opened it a little while ago. Anyway,
Because you're presenting.
probably, yeah, exactly. In fact, let's go and switch this to down here, down here, down here, down here. Let's go and choose. Yeah, couldn't get to the external data source. Right. We are going to reopen it. I want to go to that one there. I thought I was being really clever by opening it earlier. So I could have built what I've done in Excel. I could have built that in Power BI. But sometimes for your users, you want to give them a little more, or they're asking for more that you don't have time to do the development for. So this is a way of handing things over, and you're still running the the model that's been published to the service. Let's go and change one of these to Tim Alexander. There we go. He's produced 2. As director, he's produced 2. So that's all working. Now, I need to show you, what I want to do is show you how to change the database that we're talking to, but I also need to explain why. And to do that, I'm going to change my topic very briefly. So let me show you. We're just going to jump to, where is it? Publishing reports, best practice. So let's come back to this. This report's been published as an application. There's actually one report is the intro, and the second report is actually the reconciliation report. There's one page in each of these, and the reconciliation report just goes and shows me row counts for each of the tables that are in the database. What does it look like behind the scenes? So that's the really key thing. Let's go and have a look at my workspace. And the report we're looking at is essentially this DVD data 1. And you can see intro version 1, and I thought there was another version 1. Oh, the reconciliation version 1 as well. And you can see that what I've done is to include this report in the published application. So when I publish my application and I go update, and I look at the navigation, you can see I've got this report and this report that I'm actually publishing. And for permissions, I'm sharing it to a specific group and one individual. It's not shared with the entire organization. And when I share it, it gives me a link to the application. Now let's just go back to that view that we had, this one here, and I'll show you this. I'm going to switch this to be the lineage view. So now we just find the right one. And does this work? Does work. All right. So there's the analysis services database sitting in the cloud. You can see that I published that yesterday at 1:30, and you can see here it's got 3 reports that connect to it. And if I click on this report, it's included in the app. If I click on this report, it's included in the app. And if I click on this report, the one that goes with the data file, it's not included in the app. Now, I can actually open that report and it's a different color. I've got different pages in it that nobody else will see other than me, because I can see that lineage view and open things. Now, what happened was, this was all well and good. And the reason I publish things like this is if I have to make a new report for somebody, normally, when I publish the report, I'm actually publishing these 2 items. I'm publishing the report and the data that goes with it. But if you're updating your data every day, and now you've got millions and millions and millions of rows, then you now restrict yourself as to when you can publish the report, because as soon as you do, you're impacting your users. If you publish that report without its full content of data, your users are going to say, I was looking at something 10 minutes ago, where's all that data gone? So what this allows me to do is make report changes and publish them, because these are only like 5 megabyte files. These are tiny. I change the report, publish it. Change the report, publish it. Update the app, it's all available to users. Then what happens? What happens next is you go, oh, but I need to change the data model. I want to introduce something new. How do I get a new version online? Well, you can go and change version 1, and you'll be doing that work out of hours. If it's like me, it takes days to update. It's very challenging. So what I do is I publish it as a new version, DVD, in this case, DVD data 2. And you can see I've got, in fact, none of these are included in the app at the moment. If I want to make it go live, I just have to include that in the app, include that in the app, and include that, because that's the new one. Come down here, intro, we won't include that. We won't include that. And I can go update. Look at the navigation. You'll see the navigation. We want intro first, reconciliation and graphs. That's the order that I want. And I'll just do this on one of them. I'm going to take off the version 2 because I can rename it. Update the app. And let's go to it and have a look. And there it is. Now it says version 2, looks remarkably like it did before. And if I have a look at the reconciliation, because I know what's changed, you can now see, oh, here's the zoom slider too, by the way. I put it just off the screen, didn't I? That's really clever. That is a date table that I added in. So I've got 23,000 rows of date table. None of the rest of this actually changed, but there's a date table and a new relationship in there. Make that go back to full screen. And that, by adding in the date table, it let me add in some graphs, which shows some completely silly data, which is the months in which DVDs were released, and also how DVDs were released, or their release dates over time. So funnily enough, there doesn't seem to be any DVD releases of late. Anyway, right. So that's the release stuff, and I'm hoping, or best practice for deployment. So I hope that makes sense. What I want to do now is come back to our Excel model and go, hang on a minute. This model where we're looking at the DVDs for these directors and so forth is connected to version 1 of that database. I want it to connect to version 2. So what we do is if we go to data, and we can see the query and connections. And for those that have seen it, they might recognize this connection string. I can double click on this. And it's got a horrible connection name, which turns out we don't really need. We're going to call this Wellington Power BI version 1 connection, because we can. We can call it anything we like. Do that. So now we know what that connection is, and it's not a weird name we don't understand. And so what we can now do is we can say get data from the Power Platform, and we're going to get it from, in this case, the Spark tenant. And this will now, it adds in a Power BI icon and shows me the version 2 of the data set that I want to look at, and creates me a new tab at the same time. In fact, it'll create me a new pivot as soon as it gets its connection. There it is, and you can see now in here the calendar months table that I've got here, and should be calendar date as well, has also been added in. But we still haven't switched the source that we're using for this stuff. And what we want to do is go to pivot table analyze, that's the one, change the data source, choose the connection, and there's the second one that we just added in. There's the first one, we can tell what it is because we renamed it, but I want to connect to the second one. Open that, okay that. And so this list of pivot table fields will update, and will then include the date table information as well. And it won't take that long to do it because it's just a switch out. Done. So now it's actually completely switched which database it's using to satisfy the query that it's been given. So and is just as fast as it was before, which is really cool. So that's a quick alternate look at to export to Excel, and also covered some of my best practice stuff for publishing Power BI reports. That may be a little blurry for people. Are there any questions out there for that?
Nothing in the chat window. If anyone wants to come off mute, now's a good time. But if you are wondering, why would you go to this extent to get data here? Well, I mean, there's a huge audience which are in finance, accountants who just love Excel. They love having data in Excel. They love the flexibility of Excel. You can do things like, convert formulas and create reports here in Excel that just, use the full power of the pivot table functionality that's been around for such a long time. For a lot of people, this is quite a powerful way to get access to your data. Underneath the covers, as I said, it actually sends MDX queries to the Power BI dataset, not DAX, which means it can't necessarily take full advantage of all the optimizations that maybe DAX can do, so it won't be as performant. So as long as you're only dealing with, not billions of rows of data, it, should be pretty good. So,
I'm going to cross the beams briefly, but you're not going to see any data. I want to explain, why did I show you? I've lost both of them. Let's find it. Why did I show you that best practice stuff? Let's come back here. Let's look at the lineage view and just remember, there's the data. That's the report that's not shared because it's relevant to the data, the developer only. And these three here are the published reports. So here's a production one in anger. So you can see here, there's the data. And here's all the reports that are hanging off that one data file. And so
are you using this in a little bit of a way to handle the challenge of switching between the development, test, and production type environment? Managing what data source gets used by which.
No.
In a way, is this something that you could use, say, deployment pipelines for?
Yeah, deployment pipelines could help, but what it means is, so end of Spark's financial year, got auditors in at the moment, and so I had a message overnight last night from the auditors saying, can you give me a report that does X, Y, and Z? In the traditional scenario of data file report, I would have to do a new report page in here, and then I'd have to publish both of those two together. And this has got 5 years worth of financial history in it. And when I publish it, if I don't, I simply couldn't hold the 5 years of financial data on my laptop, so I couldn't publish it. What I can do is, because it's in the audit report, wherever it is, audit down here, the audit file, that is just a report with no data in it. And I can add a new page into it. I can pretty it up, do what I need to for the auditors or the finance partners, and publish it straight away. And I don't have to worry about carrying the data with me, because for those requests, I'm not actually introducing any new data. Hopefully that's starting to make sense for people.
Yeah, it does.
And this one here, this data file, again, there's stuff in here that is just for me. It's for me to figure things out, and it's not for presenting to people. The colors in it are all different. So if I do end up in it accidentally, I know things are off and I'm in the wrong place. So yeah, so hopefully that helps to understand this approach and what's going on here. Right, let's go back to our agenda, and I want to talk to you about, I really don't know how to describe it. It's a thing that is called auto exists. So I may have to open a Power BI report for this that I hadn't previously opened. Let me just find it. There it is. And
that's right. Now, while David's doing that, I'll just describe the challenge that he's hitting there. If you follow best practice Power BI data modeling, best practice data modeling, you always hear this concept of star schema, where you've got fact tables in the center, and you have relationships out to dimension tables that you apply your filtering and your grouping. Now, the challenge is, let's say you don't have a measure selected, and you decide you want to group by cities of the world and countries of the world. What you don't want to have the engine do is work out every possible permutation of city and country, multiplied out by that product. You'd use an awful lot of CPU and memory just to sort of figure out what the number of groupings there are. When obviously things like a city like Wellington can only exist in New Zealand, or Auckland in New Zealand. I know there are other cities around the world, but you shouldn't try and do a cross-join permutation of all of these cities and countries together. So there's some magic that can happen under the covers that tries to be smart about combining, grouping, and filtering by fields, often dimension tables. Particularly when there are no measures selected. But now that David's got his slide up and running, I'll hand it back, because this is what we're trying to address with this challenge.
So this is I guess it's a data challenge and it's a DAX challenge. Started out as a DAX challenge, and when I ran into issues, the confusing thing was, if I was to post a message to the community asking for help, I actually didn't know what to ask, because I couldn't describe the problem succinctly enough to say what was going on. So I'll take you on a little bit of a journey. These are real tables, and for the purposes of this, I have actually imported them into this model, because I struggled with the other examples that I saw. So I've got table A and table B, and there is a relationship between these two tables, and the relationship is on this field, which is product category L3 and product category L3. So it's a one-to-many. And this is the table showing as you would expect it to see, or to be displayed. So you can see here, I've got fields coming out of both tables. I've got some other attributes from the tables being shown. So profit center, revenue code, there's the product category. And these two columns are actually pulling data out of table B. Yep, both the SAP ones. So they're just pulling data out of table B. And this is real world. This is what I actually had. And what I wanted to do was present to my users a new column in here, which was revenue code expanded to be what its description was. So 520,000 expands to be some text of whatever it might be, and likewise. So I couldn't. You'll see here I've left a dotted relationship on these diagrams. These are not active. I guess in a normal model you may not necessarily do that. I was forced to do this because if I had an active relationship, I had a circular reference going around the entire model. So I'd have to break another link somewhere, and that I certainly didn't want to do. And all I wanted was the description out of the revenue code table. And then ultimately I wanted a description out of the profit center. So let's have a look. Let's go to the next page to the challenge. And then if I click on the table, this is, I've done exactly what I wanted to do. If we have a look in table A, you'll see a little DAX measure in here. Let's enlarge its size. Whether it's good DAX or not might be debatable. It's a measure, and we know that a measure will be evaluated on every row as it is presented. So I just said here, I need to store the revenue code. So get me the selected value out of table A for the revenue code that we've got. So that should be 800,220. And then I introduced a calculate statement to give me the first non-blank description. I'm going to force it to use that inactive relationship that I had in there, and just make sure it matches on revenue code, please. And it has actually gone and got the description for that revenue code. But then it's gone and done some really weird stuff. And now it's almost like table B is repeating for every row out of table A. And I'm going, but I've done nothing wrong. This is how it should actually be. This should be working.
Yeah, I want to point out a really important thing that you're missing here, as I mentioned, is there are no measures here. All you're doing so far up to this point is just dragging columns from dimension tables in. So you're just doing building a great big huge group by statement at the moment.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So don't do that. Go away. Right. So if I come back to here, if I go to the next tab, the intended results. Of course, the intended results are, here's my profit center, here's my revenue code, here's some descriptions, there's the product category, and there's the SAP code. So I'm nowhere near the intended results that I wanted. So I had to put up the call for help signal, the old bat signal. And as Phil says, the data here, there's no fact tables, only dimensions. And I think critically, there's been no calculations involved. There's not asking it to sum anything or do anything other material with the data to figure stuff out. So it turns out that this is known, what's going on here is known as auto exists. And one of the things, we'll run tabular editor in just a minute, Phil, just to show that's been there for some time. But yeah, as far as we know, auto exists has been around since the early days. So this did get solved, and the way to solve it was to actually introduce a calculation. So let me switch to, let's just have a look at which measure we actually used in the end. That'll do. We'll use revenue code. There we go. Go to there.
And the fastest one's always going to be like a count rows of fact table or something.
Yeah. So this one now says, go and count the rows. Do the same as we did before to remember the revenue code. We're not using calculate, but I suspect we could. This uses min-x and a filter, but essentially the way the filter's working, it's identical and gets the value that we want. And excuse me, and then basically says if we have a row count, go and show me the result. And this solved everything and just made the DAX work, and I could repeat the same for in this case, the profit center column as well. And I got the intended results that I want. Now, you might not be surprised to learn that some people in Italy already had an article on the subject, which would have helped, but as I said at the start of this journey, my challenge is I didn't actually know what the problem was and what I was looking for. So if you guys ever come across a similar situation, you will know, well, I'm not doing a calculation, and you can get around it with row count or otherwise.
And throw that link into the chat window, David. But I think it does actually explain the challenge quite eloquently. You know, here's why it does it the way it does, and here are some ideas about how you solve it if you ever do encounter it. I mean, most visuals have got a measure. You know, bar charts, line charts, they're all measure based. They're not going to do anything. So the only ones you're really going to hit this on is the table visual, where it's possible to say, drag some columns in from a bunch of dimension tables, and you know, I just want to have a report, and then you kind of wonder why you're having all these permutations. Throwing in a basic count rows of fact table measure. And I think David's going to possibly show us a tabular editor trick if he's got time.
No, there's no trick involved. It's just a blank field, but don't worry about that.
No, there is actually a property in that you can access in tabular editor.
So I don't believe this property can be set like on my laptop. I think I can set it in the service,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I haven't tried. So,
So it's,
for
so it's quite
those that
possible. Power BI
didn't,
Desktop won't let you set it because it's not hardened for that particular property. But if you
yeah,
publish it to a
yeah.
premium workspace, then you can certainly get access to that and all of the other properties via XMLA and set the default.
Now, to do what I'm doing, and I don't remember where it was now, but I did have to turn on an advanced feature. And
Unsupported.
unsupported. I had to
Yeah.
turn on this one. So a warning comes up when you open it, which you didn't see as I opened it. So as you saw, I clicked on Tabular Editor. It's gone and launched it for me, and it's connected to the model that is behind this. Nothing to do with the service. It's just the Power BI desktop model. And when you click on model, and I'm not running Zoom it, I can't show you. Down here,
Just up 3, default measure.
there it is, default. Thank you very much. So you could set in the service, and I don't know how to set it, but it doesn't matter,
It's
in the
exactly
service,
same way.
a default measure that is effectively doing a count rows for every piece of DAX that's executed.
No, only when there is a visual without a calculation. As soon as you add a
Right.
calculation, it doesn't use it. Now,
Yeah.
do bear in mind, if you set this to be a measure such as count rows of my 10 billion row facts table,
Yeah.
and you drag some just dimension columns into your visual, and you're wondering why the round trip is quite sluggish, then
Yeah. So anyway, that
especially
was
in DQ mode.
that adventure into AutoExists. So I thought that was worthwhile sharing with everybody. We've just hit 7:30. I wasn't actually clock watching. I just happened to lean over and have a look at it. And I do still have more content, but keen not to really overrun as such. I have another, we can cover this off in a future session, but I also have debugging composite models. So if you remember me showing you that database in the cloud, composite models is where I've either got two cloud models or a cloud model in an Excel file or whatever it might have. So there was a significant performance problem I had with one of those. And what I have here is what happened and how it got fixed. I also have stuff for maturity models and also incremental refresh. So
I reckon save that for your next one.
Yeah.
And what we can do is perhaps just spend the next 5 to 10 minutes doing any Q&A on what you have covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is quite neat content that you've talked about. So, if anyone wants to jump off mute, raise your hand, type a question in the chat window. Now's your opportunity. What we're doing in terms of organisers is we're rotating around David, myself, and Jonathan every 3 months. So I think between me and Jonathan are going to plan and present the next 2 sessions, and then we'll get David back in September to deep dive on some of the really cool things. Now, the reason why this is quite useful is because obviously David's organisation have gone quite big on Power BI locally here in New Zealand, so they're getting exposed to interesting challenges. So listening to David obviously gives you the chance to hear what have they hit and how did they solve it. If you're using Power BI in your organisation, you might not necessarily have hit these challenges yet or at all. But when I started the user group 6 years ago now, that was exactly why I wanted the user group, was so that we could each hear exactly how everyone else is using Power BI. And David's organisation is one of the bigger ones here in New Zealand. So it is always good to hear the kind of things they encounter. I will be, as I said, saving the recording, cropping it out just for the presentation, sticking up on the YouTube channel so you can watch and rewatch and double check those sorts of things. But equally, fire through some questions on the topics that you have seen that we haven't quite got to, so that David can prepare that content for September.
If you want to, the maturity model, I did a brief post at my on my blog site, and the links in the chat. You may be interested to know that on that scale of 1 to 5, when we did our own self-rating, we were, and I forget the exact number, but we were in the 2 area.
Oh.
So we were pretty harsh on quite a number of things, but when you average out the numbers, it might have been 2.5 or something, but it was pretty low.
You're probably actually still a lot better than many organisations who don't even consider having a maturity model. So.
Yeah, well, and ultimately what this does is it says, if we want to move up, what can we focus on to start growing and doing things? So, and then 6 months later, if you do another measure, see what's changed. So yeah.
Cool. All right.
Very good.
For those that have jumped on and that are leaving soon, thanks for jumping into the call. Look out for us end of next month, same time, same place, last Tuesday of next month. Content to be decided. Like I said, it'll either be me or Jonathan preparing it. I might see if I can get one of my European colleagues to dial in for my one. So if there are any requests, and I've got access to some very, very, very interesting speakers. Otherwise, it's our user group. So if you want to come off the mic and comment, feedback, question, now's your opportunity.
It's very silent.
I think we're all good.
Yeah.
No, that was a good presentation, David. Thank you. I really enjoyed that.
There's a lot of different avenues in there that, I mean, you and I'd been over a little bit of it, but yeah, twists and turns and how it all gets summed up in the end is quite good, particularly sharing it. So.
And thank you for joining me in my new home office, which I'm really enjoying. So just figuring out and adjusting and working out what works best. So.
Pictures. The wall needs pictures.
Yeah, it does. It's a bit of a blank wall at the moment. So I'm not going to mark any walls too quickly. So
no, great.
The view way is spectacular. So.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, I'm going to stop the recording now, and otherwise, it looks like we can pretty much finish there. So.
That's good.